The weight of the world sat on my shoulders. I could feel it pressing down on me with every step I took through the towering hallways of Harborist Holdings. The building was silent, the only sound the echo of my heels clicking on the marble floor. I had only recently been thrust into this position, the position of power I neither wanted nor expected. My father had passed unexpectedly, and with his death came my inheritance, not just the fortune, but the responsibility of running the multi-billion-dollar empire he had spent his life building. I wasn't ready. Hell, I wasn't even sure I wanted it. But here I was, alone in this massive office that had once belonged to my father. I gazed out the large windows, watching the city below, the bustling streets, the cars speeding past, unaware of the storm brewing within these walls. A storm that would change everything. My father's will had been straightforward, too straightforward. He had left me the company with no strings attached, no hidden caveats. But in his silence, there were so many unspoken words. So many things left unaddressed. My father and I had never been close. He was distant, always consumed with the business, always too busy to pay much attention to his only daughter. The few times he acknowledged me, it was with cold, transactional words. And now he was gone. It felt surreal. In a way, I wasn't just mourning him. I was mourning the years I would never get back, the years I had spent wishing for his approval, only to realize I didn't need it. But that realization came too late. The day after the funeral, I sat in my father's office, the heavy silence of the room wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. His personal effects had been cleared away, and the place looked almost sterile, just the way he liked it. But it was still his office. And now it was mine. I had no idea where to start. I didn't know the first thing about running a company. But what I did know was this. I was determined to prove I was more than just his daughter. I was going to show them, I was going to show everyone, that I could lead this company even if it meant breaking everything down and rebuilding it from the ground up. I wasn't prepared for the meeting that followed. The board of directors had called for an emergency session. They wanted answers, wanted to know what my plans were for the company moving forward. They wanted assurance that I wouldn't just crumble under the pressure, that I wasn't going to make some catastrophic mistake. I could hear their voices in my head already, their skepticism dripping with every word. When I walked into the boardroom, the tension was palpable. The room was filled with men in expensive suits, all eyes on me. I could feel the weight of their judgment. None of them had expected this. None of them had expected a young woman, let alone one with no real experience, to walk into this room and take her father's place. I had spent my life being overlooked, being underestimated. And now that underestimation felt like an invisible weight pressing against my chest. Mr. Jameson, the head of finance, spoke first. His voice was as cold as the room. "Ms. Whitmore," he began, "your father was a great leader. He built this company from the ground up. But you have no experience running a business of this magnitude. Harborist Holdings is a global empire. It's not a small-time operation. What makes you think you can handle this?" I took a deep breath and looked him in the eye, my voice calm and measured. "I don't expect to take over where my father left off. I'm not here to be a replica of him. I'm here to take this company forward. The world is changing, Mr. Jameson. The markets are evolving, and we have to evolve with them. I'm here to make sure Harborist Holdings stays ahead of the curve." The board members exchanged glances, their skepticism written on their faces. I could see their doubt, but I couldn't afford to back down. I had to be firm. I have a vision for this company, and I intend to see it through. I know there will be challenges, but I'm not afraid of them. I'm ready to face whatever comes. Mr. Jameson raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "And what exactly is this vision of yours?" he asked. I paused, gathering my thoughts. The market is shifting. The world is becoming more digital, more interconnected. We're still relying on outdated systems, old technology. We're not agile enough to keep up with the competition. We need to innovate, invest in technology, and build stronger relationships with our partners. We also need to focus on sustainability. The future is green, and we have to be a part of it if we want to stay relevant. For a moment, the room was silent. The board members seemed taken aback by my boldness. I could see them processing my words, but there was still doubt in their eyes. Mrs. Clarkson, the head of marketing, was the next to speak. "And what makes you think you can accomplish all of this?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Your father was the one who built this empire. Do you really think you can just step in and turn everything around?" I felt the weight of her words, but I didn't falter. "I don't think I can turn everything around overnight," I said. "But I know we need change. I know we need to move forward or we risk being left behind. I'm not asking for your trust. I'm asking for a chance to prove myself." There was a long silence in the room. I could feel the tension building, the pressure mounting with each passing second. I knew this was my moment. If I didn't stand firm now, if I didn't prove my worth, I would lose everything before I even had a chance to try. I had to show them I was capable. Show them that I wasn't just a placeholder, a mere heir to my father's legacy. I was Ava Whitmore, and I was ready to lead. The meeting continued, but my mind was elsewhere. I was already thinking about the future, about the steps I needed to take to change the company. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be resistance. But I was ready. I had to be. Over the next few weeks, I immersed myself in every aspect of the company. I met with department heads, analyzed financial reports, and even visited our factories to see the operations firsthand. I quickly realized just how much work needed to be done. There were inefficiencies in every corner of the company, old practices that had outlived their usefulness, and a culture of complacency that had taken root under my father's leadership. But I couldn't let that stop me. I had to push forward even if it meant shaking things up. The board's resistance was palpable. Every time I suggested a new initiative, they pushed back. But I stood my ground. I wasn't going to let them dictate my every move. Slowly but surely I began to make changes. I brought in new leadership for key departments, pushed for better technology, and restructured the marketing strategy. The road wasn't easy. People grumbled, resisted, but I kept going. I knew it was the only way. But it wasn't just the board I had to worry about. It was the whispers in the halls, the murmurs of employees who didn't believe in me. They saw me as a young woman with no experience, a figurehead at the top of a company built by my father. They didn't know that I was already changing things from the inside out, making decisions that would pave the way for a more sustainable future. One night, after a particularly grueling day at the office, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from my father's lawyer, who had been handling his estate. He had something important to tell me, something that would change everything. The call from my father's lawyer was unexpected, and it rattled me more than I cared to admit. It was late in the evening, the office was nearly empty, and I had just finished reading through another round of reports. More financial data, more figures, more endless charts. I was getting tired. The weight of the company's future hung heavily on me, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could carry it. "Ms. Whitmore," the lawyer's voice crackled through the phone, "I have some information regarding your father's will that you need to know. It's unusual, to say the least." I sat up straight in my chair, a cold shiver running down my spine. My father's will had been straightforward in its terms. Harborist Holdings was mine, no contest. But the lawyer's voice hinted at something more. Something hidden. "Tell me," I urged, my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest. "There are some conditions to your inheritance, Ms. Whitmore," the lawyer continued. "A set of documents was added to your father's will just a few months before his death. It's a stipulation regarding the future of Harborist Holdings. If you want to keep full control of the company, there are certain actions you'll need to take. There's a timeline, a series of business ventures and corporate partnerships that must be secured before the end of this fiscal year." My mind spun. I had been so focused on the day-to-day operations, the demands of the board, the pushback from the employees, that I hadn't considered the possibility of additional hidden layers in my father's legacy. The last thing I wanted was to be constrained by some cryptic clause buried in a legal document. "Tell me what's in the stipulation," I demanded, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. The lawyer cleared his throat. "The condition is simple. In order to retain full control of Harborist Holdings, you must secure an agreement with the international tech company Luther Enterprises. Your father was in negotiations with them, but the deal was never finalized. He left behind a clause stating that if you fail to finalize the deal by the end of the fiscal year, Harborist Holdings will be divided among the board members, and the company will lose its majority stake in several key sectors. Essentially, you would lose control." My heart skipped a beat. Luther Enterprises was a massive player in the tech industry. They were innovators, powerful, and ruthless. They had the kind of influence that could either make or break a company like ours. I didn't know about this," I murmured, my mind racing. "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" "I'm sorry, Ms. Whitmore," the lawyer said, his voice apologetic but firm. "The clause only became relevant after your father's death. I didn't have access to the full will until now. Can you send me the documents?" I asked, already gathering my things and preparing to leave the office. I needed to meet with my legal team. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. "Of course," the lawyer replied. "I'll have them sent over immediately." The next few days were a blur. I met with my legal team, sifted through mountains of paperwork, and tried to piece together my father's last few months. The more I dug, the more questions arose. What had he been thinking when he added this clause? Why hadn't he told me about it? Had he known something I didn't? Or was he simply playing a game I didn't understand? The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like he had been preparing for something. Preparing me, maybe. The truth was, I had never fully understood my father. He had been a distant man, consumed with his work, often too busy to even acknowledge my presence. But now, in his absence, I was left with nothing but his legacy, an empire that seemed to be slowly unraveling before my eyes. By the time I finished reviewing the documents, it became clear. I had to act fast. The deal with Luther Enterprises wasn't just a business move. It was the key to my survival. If I failed to secure the deal, I would lose everything. And the board, with their skeptical eyes and constant questioning, wouldn't hesitate to take advantage of my failure. I picked up the phone and called an old contact, someone who had worked with my father for years. His name was Robert Hale, and he had been involved in the negotiations with Luther Enterprises. If anyone knew how to approach them, it was him. "Robert," I said when he picked up, "I need your help. It's about Luther Enterprises." I could hear his hesitation on the other end of the line. "Ava, I don't know if this is a good idea. They're not easy to work with, and they don't play by the rules. You're walking into dangerous territory." "I know," I said, my voice resolute, "but I don't have a choice. My father left me with a condition in his will. I need this deal to secure the future of Harborist Holdings." There was a long pause. "All right," Robert finally said. "I'll meet with you. But be prepared for a battle. Luther doesn't make deals lightly." We arranged a meeting for the following week. The stakes had never felt higher. As I prepared for the negotiation, I couldn't help but think about the years I had spent in my father's shadow. All the times I had tried to get his attention, to prove myself worthy of his approval, only to be met with indifference. And now, here I was fighting for control of the very empire he had built. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of the deal, the company, the board. The weight of my father's legacy felt suffocating. But I wasn't just fighting for the company. I was fighting for myself. For the chance to prove that I wasn't just the daughter of my father. I was Ava Whitmore, and I would not be defined by his legacy. I would create my own. The next morning, I met Robert at a nondescript cafe near Luther Enterprises headquarters. He was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, his face grim. "I've arranged a meeting with their top executive, Vincent Luther," Robert said without preamble. "But be warned, he's not someone who can be easily intimidated. He's known for being ruthless." "Ruthless or not, I don't care," I replied, my tone sharp. "I need this deal, Robert, and I'm not leaving without it." As we headed to Luther Enterprises' sleek, glass-fronted building, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a lion's den. But there was no turning back now. If I didn't secure this deal, I would lose everything. The company, the future, my chance to prove myself. It all hinged on this. The meeting with Vincent Luther was tense. He was everything Robert had warned me about: cold, calculating, and unyielding. His eyes never left mine as we discussed the terms of the deal, his demeanor unflinching as he threw out impossible demands. But I wasn't backing down. We negotiated for hours. Every concession felt like a battle, and each victory came at a high price. But slowly, inch by inch, I began to make headway. I wasn't just playing to win, I was playing to survive. When the meeting ended, I walked out of Luther Enterprises building with a signed contract in hand. I had done it. Against all odds, I had secured the deal that would save Harborist Holdings. But as I stood outside the building, the weight of the deal settling in, I realized something else. This wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about me. I had fought for control, fought to prove my worth, and in the end I had won. But the battle was far from over. The board would never fully accept me. The employees would never fully trust me. But I had taken the first step toward something greater, something that was entirely mine. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The deal with Luther Enterprises had been finalized, but the satisfaction of the victory quickly faded into the realities of what came next. Despite securing control of Harborist Holdings, Ava knew that her position as CEO was far from guaranteed. The board, though grudgingly impressed by her tenacity, was still skeptical. There were whispers in the halls, looks exchanged behind closed doors, and constant pressure from all directions. The weight of the company's future still pressed heavily on her shoulders, but something inside Ava had shifted. She had proven that she could make difficult decisions, face formidable adversaries, and come out on top. But now the real work began, shaping Harborist into something that would reflect her vision, not just her father's legacy. One evening, as Ava sat in her office, reviewing the next steps for the company, she heard a knock on the door. "Come in," she called without looking up. It was Robert Hale, her old contact who had helped with the Luther deal. His face was solemn, and he closed the door behind him softly. "I've been meaning to speak with you, Ava," he said, his tone more serious than usual. Ava set down her papers and looked up at him. "What's on your mind?" "There's something you need to know," Robert began, sitting across from her. "The board, they've been discussing a potential takeover. There are some powerful figures within the company who think that, despite the deal with Luther, your leadership is too untested. They might make a move soon." Ava's heart skipped a beat. The board's skepticism was one thing, but the threat of a takeover was something else entirely. It felt like a shadow looming over her hard-earned victory. "Who's behind it?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "I can't say for sure," Robert replied, his expression conflicted. "But I think you need to be prepared. They're already making plans, and they've been quietly rallying support from some of the more influential members of the company." Ava leaned back in her chair, the realization hitting her like a wave. Her fight for control was far from over. She had secured one battle, but the war for her position and her future was just beginning. "I won't let them take it from me," she said firmly, her eyes narrowing with resolve. "I've fought too hard, come too far. They want to take over? Let them try. But I won't go down without a fight." Robert nodded. I'll be here to help you, Ava. You don't have to do this alone. Ava's mind raced as she thought through her options. She had learned the hard way that simply playing by the rules wasn't enough. She would need to be strategic, decisive, and above all ruthless. She had already proven that she could make the tough decisions when it mattered. And now she would show everyone, including the board, that she could fight for her company and win. The next few weeks saw Ava engaging in a series of covert meetings with key figures within Harborist Holdings. She worked behind the scenes to strengthen her alliances, taking steps to ensure that the board would have no grounds to challenge her authority. Every move was calculated. Every word spoken was measured. Ava was no longer the unsure daughter trying to live up to her father's expectations. She was a leader in her own right. But it wasn't just business. Ava also had to face the emotional toll of her choices. Her relationship with her family, which had been strained for years, was pushed to its breaking point. Her mother, still bitter over the past, accused her of abandoning everything her father had built in favor of her own ambitions. Her younger brother, who had always been the golden child in her father's eyes, now saw her as a threat. Ava had spent most of her life trying to live up to their expectations, but now she realized she had to leave them behind if she wanted to move forward. One evening, as Ava sat in her office, staring at the city lights through the glass windows, she received a call. It was from the lawyer handling her father's estate. "I'm sorry to bother you, Ms. Whitmore," the lawyer said, "but I believe we've uncovered something in your father's will that you might find significant." Ava's heart skipped a beat. After everything she had already uncovered, she thought she knew every secret her father had left behind. But there was always something more. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tight. "The will contains an additional letter, a personal letter addressed to you," the lawyer explained. "It was hidden within the final clauses of the inheritance documents. I believe you should read it." Ava felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected this. Her father, the man who had always kept his distance, had left her a final message. She quickly arranged to meet with the lawyer. The letter was short but profound. It was written in her father's unmistakable handwriting, and the words carried an unexpected weight. "Ava, if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. Know this. I always believed you could lead this company better than I ever did. The world is not kind to women who fight for power. They will try to tear you down, and they will question your every move. But you are stronger than you realize. Don't ever forget who you are, and never let them take your place. I may not have been the father you wanted, but I always knew you had the strength to succeed. This is your time. Don't waste it." Ava's hands trembled as she read the letter again, the words sinking deep into her heart. In a strange way, this letter was the approval she had always craved. It was her father's acknowledgement that she was capable, that she had what it took to lead. But it also served as a reminder that the battle ahead would be fierce. She had already fought to get where she was, but now she had to fight for her legacy, for her right to lead Harborist Holdings on her own terms. And she would. Because now, for the first time in her life, Ava truly understood her father's final words. She wasn't just his daughter anymore. She was Ava Whitmore, and the world would soon know her name.